Welcome to Percussion Methods. Today we're talking all about buzz rolls. Rolls are an incredibly important technique because it's one of the only ways that percussionists can generate an illusion of sustain. If you're a singer or a trumpet player, you just keep holding out your note, but for a drummer, here's a quarter note, here's an eighth note, here's a whole note. Our responsibility for the note ends after we play that attack, but not so with rolls. The mechanics of executing a buzz roll are quite a bit different than just playing single strokes. First of all, you need to make an alteration to the grip. Starting with a really good German grip, that's with a flat thumb across from a curved index finger. Instead of having the back fingers on the stick, you're going to remove them. Put pressure on the stick between your thumb and index finger. You may even need to add a little bit of pressure from your middle finger, but that's going to allow the stick to buzz against the head as you press it in. Buzz rolls are also not a wrist-initiated stroke like we do with alternating notes. These come all the way back from the elbow. We're going to pump with our arms, which lowers this entire platform, allowing the stick to buzz in our fulcrum with the back fingers off. Here are a few right-handed buzzes. You notice I'm articulating all the way back at the elbow. Here's some left-handed buzzes. My wrist is not hinging at all. I need to keep that platform locked in, so I'm moving all the way back and hinging from the elbow. Soft rolls, such as those at piano, pianissimo, or even mezzo-piano, have a lot of fine, tight buzzes in them. Soft rolls also have overlapping buzzes. One will be buzzing while the other one is still on the head. You can work on getting smooth, soft rolls by playing one buzz after the other and allowing them to overlap. So I'm going to play a right-handed buzz, then a left-handed buzz. Notice the tips of both sticks are on the head at the same time. I'm pressing just enough to get a nice, long, consistent buzz. If you don't press hard enough, you get a really bumpy, coarse buzz. It sounds kind of like this. If you press too hard, you get a very zippery kind of buzz. Work slowly, one hand at a time, to try and get a really nice, rich buzz that's not too coarse and not too pressed. Here's 4 overlapping soft buzzes. Notice there are moments where the tips of both sticks are on the head at the same time. 6 overlapping soft buzzes. 8. At this slow speed, you can still hear the individual buzzes in the roll. We're not quite yet creating that illusion of sustain. We need to pump our hands a little bit faster. It's going to sound kind of like this. You might notice you don't need to pump your hands very fast to get a pretty nice sustained buzz roll sound. As our rolls get a little bit louder, like at the mezzo-piano level, I'm still going to have a little bit of overlap with the buzzes, and I'm going to need to pump my hands a little bit faster. These rolls are also going to become gradually more coarse. There's going to be less tiny little bounces. A single buzz at mezzo-piano might have 6 or 7 tiny little notes in it, whereas a roll at piano or pianissimo is going to have many more. Here's a mezzo-piano roll. Notice I'm pumping my hands faster and the sticks are spending a little less time on the head. As our roll dynamic increases up to mezzo-forte, we're not going to overlap our buzzes so much, and it's going to become more and more coarse. There's going to be less bounces every time we press the stick into the head. We're also going to need to pump our hands faster. Here's some mezzo-forte rolls. For a forte level and above buzz roll, we're going to really raise the height, play closer to the center of the head, and now we're going to be playing a much coarser buzz with only 3 strokes per hand. We're also going to be pumping our arms quite a bit faster than our other rolls. If I take a forte buzz roll and really slow it down, it's going to sound and look like this. Do you hear how there are 3 notes per hand? If we take that and speed it up, we should get a really nice, rich, loud roll. These loud rolls require quite a bit of grip strength between the index finger and thumb, and perhaps the middle finger for more support. But again, these back two fingers are going to be off the stick. You need quite a bit of grip pressure. I tell my students that if you were to grab somebody's nose as hard as you need to grab the stick during a loud roll, it would hurt a lot, and it would also be a weird, mean thing to do. You may have noticed at that louder dynamic level, I'm actually engaging some of my shoulder muscles a little bit. Sometimes orchestral drummers will call this the chicken wing effect as you play these louder rolls. That larger muscle group helps drive the stick. These rolls can feel really, really wild, but you need to pump them pretty fast and with a lot of energy to make them sing. Some rules of thumb for all buzz rolls is that they should connect all the way to the note that follows them, or the release note. There might be a tie leading into that release note, there might not. It just depends on the notation style of the composer. Avoid having any kind of break in the roll before the release note. This is an example of what we're not looking for. You hear that? It's kind of like someone singing la, ah. There's a break in there. We don't want that. Continue all the way to the release note. Another rule of thumb for rolls is that they should be the same dynamic level the entire time. Unless an accent is actually printed at the beginning or end of the roll, don't spike them. Here's not what we're looking for unless there were to be accents on it. This would be much more even. To play that release note at the end of the roll, in your grip, you simply put the back fingers back on. That'll deactivate the buzzing action. So back fingers off, buzz on, and the buzz turns off. Since you're already pumping your arms to get the buzz roll going, you probably want to play your release note with another arm-initiated stroke. It's pretty tricky to switch back to a hinging wrist action. Putting buzz rolls into a musical context, it's very, very important as you're studying your music to find a good roll base for the tempo and dynamic of the roll you're working with. For example, at any given tempo, you shouldn't be pulsing at the same speed for a loud roll as you do for a soft roll. As we saw, softer rolls go slower with a finer buzz and more overlap. Loud rolls are coarser and you pump your hands a lot faster with no overlap. This example has a few different roll bases at 72 BPM. You can see the first measure is marked piano, and you've got quadruple roll bases. We're going to play 4 buzzes in every beat. So it's just like playing 16th notes at this tempo. When we go up to mezzo-piano, a quintuplet works really, really well. Mezzo-forte, a sextuplet works well. And finally, up at forte, a septuplet works really, really nicely. I'll play 2 beats worth of the bass, then buzz on that bass for 2 beats. Then I'll go on to the next dynamic level. Here's mezzo-piano. Mezzo-forte. Now up at forte. In the 5th measure, you can see how those roll bases would play out in the middle of a 1-measure crescendo. I'm going to start with a quadruple, then a quintuple, then a sextuple, then a septuple, and end with the release on the final beat. It can be helpful for some of these odd rhythms like quintuples and septuples to use a word evenly spaced within the beat to help get the timing. For example, you could say this crescendo measure starting at the beginning like this. Colorado Opportunity, Saudi Arabia Golden Opportunity 1. Playing just the bass, it sounds like this. If you want to get a little fancy, you can even slur that speed up over time so that every beat isn't distinctly faster than the next one. Check it out. Hear how it kind of sounds like a smooth accelerando through the measure? It's a little tricky to do, but with practice, it can make your rolls sound really smooth. This next example shows roll bases at 96 beats per minute. You'll notice the piano now goes to a triple subdivision. The mezzo-piano goes to a quadruple. the mezzo-forte is a quintuple, and the forte also a quintuple. Playing a sextuple would be pumping the hands a little bit too fast. It would actually cause the roll to sound really, really tense and pressed. Here's an example of what a forte roll would sound like that's too fast. I'm going to use a sextuple subdivision, and you'll notice it's pretty tense. Trying to buzz that fast takes way too much energy, and you're not letting the head do some of the work for you. Okay, I'll play the piano bass for 2 beats, then buzz on it for 2 beats, then do the same thing with the next dynamic, then the mezzo-forte, then the forte. Mezzo-piano, 4s. Mezzo-forte, 5s. Forte, also 5s. Here's what the crescendo measure would sound like just with the roll bases, no buzzes yet. Now buzzed. Using that pattern of roll bases in the crescendo bar gives you an odd number of notes, so your release is going to be on the opposite hand that you started the roll on. Jumping up to 120 BPM, our roll bases change somewhat again. Piano stays as triples, mezzo-piano stays as 4s, but mezzo-fortes and fortes also need to stay as quadruplets. I'll play 2 beats of the roll bass at piano, then buzz on it, then go on to mezzo-piano, mezzo-forte, then forte in the same formula. Mezzo-piano, 4s. Mezzo-forte, also 4s. Forte, more 4s. The roll bases in the crescendo measure at 120 BPM sounds like this. If you wanted to use some words to help navigate the subdivision change from the 8th note triplets to the 16th notes, you could say something like pineapple, Colorado, Colorado, Colorado 1. If you want even more fine control over the roll bass speed at this tempo, you can go into 2 beat long patterns. You can see that in this example. Measure 1 at piano actually works if you space 5 notes evenly over the course of 2 beats. Mezzo-piano works well if you do that with 7 notes over 2 beats. Mezzo-forte works really, really well as 4s. For forte, you evenly spread out 9 notes over the course of 2 beats. Here's what these roll bases would sound like. Piano. Mezzo-piano. Mezzo-forte. Forte. Now I'll use those roll bases to play each dynamic for 4 counts, then go right on to the next dynamic. This option changes the tone of each roll dynamic more than the first one that we looked at, but it is significantly trickier. Study your music and write in the roll bases just as you would with any other sticking. I like to put a numeral in the roll or actually draw what the notation would look like for the roll bass. That way I practice it the same way every time. The hand you start your roll on doesn't really matter as long as the sticking is working for you in the context of the music you're working on. The hand you end the roll on for the release note might depend on how fast your roll bass is or what rhythm you're buzzing on.